At a backyard barbecue, my wife laughed in front of everyone. "We're not even really married." By the next weekend, I made her words come true. The smell of smoked brisket drifted across the yard, mixing with the sweet tang of barbecue sauce and the faint sound of country music playing from a Bluetooth speaker on the porch. It was a warm Saturday in late June, the kind of small-town Texas afternoon where neighbors gathered without needing an excuse. I stood near the edge of the patio with a Shiner Bock in hand, nodding at our host Mark as he carefully flipped ribs over the grill. Laughter, clinking beer bottles, and the hum of conversation floated around me. It was supposed to be an easy weekend hangout. Just friends, good food, and no drama. At least that's what I thought. Then her voice cut through everything like glass shattering on concrete. "Stop acting like you own me. We're not even really married." The words hit the air with such force that the yard went silent almost instantly. The chatter died mid-sentence. Even the kids playing tag on the lawn froze. I felt every head turn in my direction. My wife, Rachel, stood a few feet away, her face flushed with irritation, hands planted firmly on her hips. She looked like a prosecutor addressing a guilty defendant. And I was her chosen target. All I'd asked, calmly, quietly, was if she could let me know where she was planning to go next weekend since she had mentioned leaving town. That was it. A simple question. But to her it was apparently an unforgivable act of control. The silence stretched painfully long. I could hear the faint hiss of fat dripping onto the hot coals. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked twice and then stopped as if even the animals knew something was unfolding. Then came the sound I'll never forget. A stifled laugh. Someone by the cooler snickered. Another joined in. And just like that, half the backyard tried to hide their smirks behind Solo cups and beer bottles. To them, it was entertainment. My humiliation played live for their amusement. Rachel's eyes narrowed with satisfaction like she had just scored a decisive point in a long, bitter game. She thrived on these public performances, these little power plays, where she got to paint me as some overbearing fool while everyone else chuckled. And for years, I had done exactly what was expected. Shrug it off, apologize, pretend it didn't sting, pretend it didn't matter that my own wife loved nothing more than belittling me in front of a crowd. But that afternoon in Fort Worth, something shifted. It wasn't anger, not at first. It was clarity. A strange, cold calm that settled in my chest like ice water. For the first time in years, I didn't feel cornered. I felt free. I raised my beer slowly and let a smile spread across my face, not the weak, forced smile I usually wore to patch things over. No. This one was genuine, amused almost, and it confused the hell out of her. "You're absolutely right," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're not married." The laughter stopped instantly. You could feel the air shift. A few jaws literally dropped. Mark, still holding a pair of tongs, froze like a statue mid-turn. Rachel blinked, thrown completely off balance as if the ground had just been ripped out from under her. I took a step back, nodding toward our host. "Thanks for the food, man. Great party." Then I looked Rachel dead in the eye, still smiling. "Enjoy your weekend trip. Take as much time as you need." And with that, I walked. Every step across that yard felt like walking through molasses and lightning at the same time. Slow, deliberate, but charged with energy. Behind me, I could hear whispers erupting, the hushed tones of people desperate to analyze what they'd just witnessed. But I didn't turn back. I slid into my old Ford, started the engine, and pulled away. As the house shrank in the rearview mirror, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, texts already pouring in. Some from friends at the party asking if I was okay. Some from Rachel herself, filled with question marks and exclamation points. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I parked in front of our home on Sycamore Drive, the little brick house we had shared for 3 years, and just sat there. Engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the front porch where countless arguments had begun, where apologies had been demanded, where the weight of her disdain had settled over me night after night. This was the place I had been treated like an intruder in my own life. The place where every suggestion I made was twisted into some imagined attempt at control. The place where respect had quietly packed its bags and vanished months ago. She wanted to act single, She wanted to make a show of telling people I had no say in her choices. Fine. If she was so determined to prove that we weren't really married, then I was going to take her at her word. Right there in the quiet of that parked truck, a plan began to form. Not an angry plan, not a vengeful outburst. A clear, methodical operation. Step 1. Make sure she came home to a reality that matched her declarations. By the time she rolled her suitcase out of that barbecue on Sunday, she'd have no idea the storm she'd set in motion. And when the weekend was over, when she tried to return like nothing had happened, she would find out exactly what it means to live without a husband. For years, she had pushed and tested, daring me to prove I had a breaking point. Well, she had finally found it. And in front of everyone, no less. Sunday morning broke warm and bright, the kind of Texas summer day where even the air feels heavy before noon. Rachel had left early, oversized suitcase rolling noisily down the driveway, muttering something about needing space to think. I watched her Honda Civic disappear around the corner and felt a strange peace settle over me. The kind of peace you feel when you've made a decision you can't take back. I poured myself a mug of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled out my phone. The first call was simple. A locksmith in town, a guy with good reviews, and a reputation for discretion. "Can you be here tomorrow morning?" I asked. He chuckled knowingly. "Marriage trouble?" "Ex-marriage trouble," I corrected. He didn't even sound surprised. 8 a.m. Work for you. Perfect. That was step 1. Step 2 required supplies. I drove out to a Home Depot in Arlington and pushed a cart down the long fluorescent aisles, filling it with sturdy moving boxes, bubble wrap, and thick rolls of packing tape. People glanced at me curiously as I stacked box after box in my cart, but I didn't care. Every piece of cardboard I loaded was a quiet declaration she wanted freedom, so I would give it to her. Back at Sycamore Drive, I parked in the driveway and unloaded my haul. The house was silent, almost eerily so, without her constant commentary, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt like mine again. I started in the closet. 3 years' worth of designer clothes shoes that cost more than my truck's tires and racks of handbags, carefully arranged in rainbow order. Normally, I would have felt anger rising as I packed each piece away, but instead, I worked with calm precision. Folded neatly, wrapped carefully, boxed with clear labels written in thick black marker clothes. Shoes. Bags. If anyone ever asked later, they would see proof that I hadn't acted out of spite. No garbage bags dumped on the curb, no messy piles, just clean, methodical organization. Her belongings deserved more respect in departure than she had ever shown me in our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. By mid-afternoon, I had finished the bedroom. The living room was next. Throw pillows she'd insisted we buy knickknacks from expensive boutiques, picture frames where our smiles had long since faded. Each item went into its own box, cushioned and secured. I paused only once when I pulled down a photo from the mantel. Our wedding day. Her smile was dazzling, mine naive. I almost laughed. That man in the tuxedo had no idea what he was signing up for. I slid the photo into bubble wrap and set it aside. History deserved a box, too, even if it was history she had already erased in her mind. When the sun began sinking toward the horizon, I dragged 15 boxes into the living room and stacked them like a fortress. My back ached. My hands were raw from tape, but I felt lighter than I had in months. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 would require a lawyer. I pulled out my phone again and scrolled through contacts until I found the number a coworker had given me months ago. Mason and Hill Family Law, the receptionist answered. "I need to schedule a consultation," I said. "What's the situation?" My wife stood up in front of 15 witnesses yesterday and declared we're not really married. There was a pause on the other end, then a small laugh. "That sounds promising for your case. Can you come in tomorrow afternoon?" "Yes." By the time I ended the call, the plan was moving like clockwork. That night, I grilled myself a steak in the backyard and cracked open a cold beer. The same backyard where Rachel had once berated me for wasting time on a grill when we could just order Uber Eats. The air smelled of mesquite and sizzling meat, and for the first time in years, dinner actually tasted good. No tension, no lecture, no walking on eggshells, just silence and peace. Monday morning came sharp and early. The locksmith's van rolled into the driveway at exactly 7:58 a.m. The guy climbed out balding with calloused hands, and a no-nonsense demeanor. He looked like he'd seen this 100 times before. Which doors, he asked, hauling his toolbox. All of them, I said. Front, back, garage. Replace every lock. He raised an eyebrow, then grinned. You got it. As he worked, I stood on the porch, sipping fresh coffee, watching him drill out old locks and install heavy military-grade deadbolts. The rhythmic sound of metal on metal felt like music. Every turn of the screwdriver was another layer of protection, another boundary she could never cross again. When he finished, he handed me a new set of keys. Nobody's getting in without your permission. Exactly what I needed. I paid him in cash and added a generous tip. As his van pulled away, I looked at the little brick house with fresh eyes. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like neutral territory. It felt like mine again. That afternoon, I kept my appointment at the law office downtown. Mason himself was a tall, sharp-eyed man in his 50s with a handshake that conveyed both confidence and finality. He sat across from me at a polished oak desk, listening intently as I laid everything out. Rachel's public outburst, the witnesses, the months of text messages where she dismissed marriage as just a piece of paper and mocked the idea of commitment. He leaned back in his chair, lips curling into something between a smirk and a satisfied nod. That's what we call an admission against interest, he said. She's made your case for you. How fast can we move, I asked. I'll have papers drawn up by Wednesday, filed by Thursday. She'll be served before the weekend. Perfect. I slid my phone across the desk and showed him the messages. He scrolled, eyes narrowing at each line. She's practically writing the argument herself, he said. This will be one of the cleanest cases I've ever handled. By the time I left his office, the weight on my shoulders had evaporated. The sun was still high over the city, and I drove back to Sycamore Drive with the windows down, letting the hot summer air whip through the cab. The house greeted me with silence. Boxes stacked neatly in the living room, new locks glinting in the sunlight, a fortress prepared. I leaned against the doorway, arms folded, and allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Rachel had wanted freedom. She had wanted to stand in front of everyone we knew and declare that I had no place in her life. Well, she was about to find out that sometimes you really do get exactly what you ask for. Tuesday morning sunlight poured through the blinds, and for once, I didn't resent it. I woke up early, brewed coffee, and stood in the quiet kitchen listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The house felt different, cleaner, sharper. As if the new locks had purged more than just her key, they had cleared out months of suffocating tension. I had work to do. The boxes from Sunday were stacked neatly in the living room, waiting like soldiers for orders. Today, they'd find their place. I started with the bathroom. Rachel had turned it into her personal spa, endless shelves of lotions, makeup palettes, curling irons, hair dryers, and scented candles she almost never lit. I wrapped everything carefully, lined the bottom of a box with towels, and arranged the bottles upright so they wouldn't leak. Then came the bookshelves. Dozens of self-help guides with titles that now felt bitterly ironic. How to Manifest What You Want, The Art of Boundaries. Finding Freedom in a World of Expectations. I stacked them one by one, labeling the box in clear block letters, Books. By noon, the house was quieter still. The closet was bare, the bathroom shelves empty, the living room stripped of every trace of her presence. Each room echoed faintly, like it was exhaling after holding its breath for too long. I loaded the boxes onto a dolly and rolled them out the front door. The sun was brutal, but I had planned ahead. From the trunk of my truck, I pulled out a large blue tarp I'd bought at Target the night before. I spread it across the lawn, the plastic flapping in the hot breeze, and began arranging the boxes like pieces in an art installation. Clothes here, shoes there, books stacked neatly in the middle. On top, I placed the decorative throw pillows she had insisted on buying for the couch, the ones that made it impossible to sit comfortably. They looked ridiculous under the blazing sun, but that was the point. I wanted everything visible, organized, undeniable. It didn't take long for the neighbors to notice. Mrs. Wilkins from across the street was the first. She peeked through her curtains so obviously that I almost waved. A few minutes later, she came out onto her porch with her little terrier pretending to fuss with a potted plant, while her eyes darted straight to the boxes. Down the street, Mr. Chavez slowed his daily dog walk, pretending to check his phone, while his golden retriever sniffed the curb. His eyebrows rose as he took in the scene, and he gave me the kind of sympathetic nod men reserve for each other when words aren't necessary. Perfect witnesses. I wasn't trying to humiliate Rachel behind closed doors. No, this needed to be public, just like her declaration at the barbecue had been. If she wanted to strip me of dignity in front of our friends, I was going to return the favor with precision. By early afternoon, the display was complete, 15 labeled boxes, stacked neatly under the tarp, electronics, cushioned clothes, folded shoes lined like a department store shelf. Anyone driving down Sycamore Drive could see it for themselves. That's when I walked across the street. Mrs. Wilkins was waiting, lips pressed together in the kind of expression that said she'd been dying for me to explain. "Afternoon, ma'am," I said politely. "Afternoon," she replied, eyes darting past me to the boxes. "Just letting you know I said Rachel's moving out. If she shows up this weekend and asks, you can tell her ex-husband said she wanted to be single. I'm just making sure her living situation matches her relationship status." Her eyes widened, and then she nodded slowly. "Well," she said, "I suppose that's fair." She did make quite the announcement at the barbecue. "Exactly," I said. I turned and walked back across the street, leaving her to spread the news through the grapevine. By dinner, the entire neighborhood would know. Next came the digital cleanup. I pulled out my phone, opened Facebook, and edited my profile. Relationship status, single. Profile picture updated to one without her. Then I blocked her on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat for good measure. Within minutes, my phone lit up with notifications. Old friends, co-workers, even casual acquaintances started messaging. Some asked if I was okay. Some already knew exactly why the change had happened. Word traveled fast in Fort Worth. And I wanted it to. I left the phone buzzing on the counter while I made a sandwich. For once, I wasn't desperate to explain myself or manage her version of the story. She could spin whatever narrative she wanted when she came back. My side was already in motion, backed by evidence witnesses and a lawyer who knew how to file paperwork. At 4 o'clock, Mason the attorney called. "Papers are ready for review," he said. "Can you come by before 5? On my way, I replied. His office felt different this time. Less intimidating, more like a war room where everything was under control. He slid the draft documents across the desk. Divorce petition, financial disclosures, legal wording that looked dry and clinical, but carried the weight of finality. "She's not going to like this," Mason said, tapping a page. "But she handed you every piece of evidence we need. Public declaration, written messages, witnesses. Judges don't take kindly to people who dismiss marriage as meaningless and then demand benefits from it." I signed where he told me to sign. Each stroke of the pen felt like carving my way out of a cage. "When will she be served?" I asked. "Friday afternoon," he said. "Just in time for her to come back from that little weekend getaway." I nodded, imagining her face as she pulled into the driveway, expecting everything to be exactly as she left it. Instead, she'd find her belongings lined up like a yard sale, her keys useless, her social media erased, and divorce papers waiting. That evening, I grilled chicken on the back deck, sipping a cold beer while the sun dipped below the rooftops. From across the street, I could see Mrs. Wilkins, still at her window, undoubtedly calling her sister or her book club with updates. Good. Let them talk. Let the entire neighborhood see what happens when someone declares they're not really married. Rachel wanted independence. By Friday, she'd have it. Friday evening carried a tension I could feel in my bones. I sat on the porch of the house on Sycamore Drive, sipping a Lone Star, the air heavy with cicadas, and the smell of freshly cut grass. Across the yard, the tarp rippled faintly over the stacks of boxes. From the street, anyone could read the black marker labels, clothes, shoes, books personal. It looked less like moving day and more like evidence displayed in a courtroom. At 6:45 p.m., her car appeared. Rachel's Civic slowed as it approached the driveway, headlights catching the neat rows of her life now sitting outside. The moment she realized what she was seeing, her mouth fell open. She hit the brakes hard, sat frozen for a beat, then shoved the door open. The slam echoed down the street. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, voice sharp enough to slice through the thick summer air. Why is my stuff on the lawn? I leaned back in my chair, calm, deliberate. Your belongings are right where they belong, outside the home of a man you told the world you weren't married to. Her face went crimson. Don't do this. Don't embarrass yourself. Open the door. We'll talk inside. You don't live here, I said. Her laugh was high brittle. Oh, please, cut the nonsense. She fished her keys out of her bag, stormed up the porch steps, and jammed the key into the front lock. It turned halfway, then jammed solid. She twisted harder. Nothing. You changed the lock, she snapped, spinning around. Monday morning, I said. Every door. You can't just lock me out of my own house. You made it clear it wasn't your house. I said, my voice even. Remember, across the street, Mrs. Wilkins had stepped onto her porch with her terrier eyes glued to the scene. 2 houses down, Mr. Chavez paused mid-dog walk. Another neighbor peeked through a screen door. My stage had an audience just like hers had last Saturday. Rachel glanced at them, her voice dropping to a hiss. Stop making a scene. I set the bottle down and stood slowly. You wanted a scene. You made one at Mark's barbecue. You wanted everyone to know I wasn't really your husband. Consider this. Consistency. Her hands balled into fists. You're insane. This isn't how marriage works. You're right, I said, pulling a folded document from my pocket. This is how marriage works. I handed it to her. She took it like it might bite, scanning the header, then flipping pages, eyes darting faster, expression collapsing with each line. You filed for divorce, she breathed. Without even talking to me, I tilted my head. I did talk to you. You told me loudly that we weren't married. I'm just agreeing. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And 15 witnesses heard it. She shook her head violently. You can't be serious. We built this house together. Bought it before you, I said evenly. It's mine after 2. Her lip trembled, but she pivoted into anger. I'll get a lawyer. You think you'll keep everything? Think again. I smiled without humor. I already spoke to mine. Judges don't look kindly on people who trash marriage as just a piece of paper and then try to cash in on it. Her eyes flicked to the neighbors again. They weren't hiding their interest now. Mrs. Wilkins crossed her arms, head tilted. Mr. Chavez gave a small, pitying shake. Even the woman behind the screen door leaned forward to hear more. Rachel's strength bled away in the weight of all those eyes. She softened, suddenly stepping closer, tears trembling in her lashes. I don't want this, she whispered. I love you. Months ago, that might have pierced me. Now it sounded like a bad line from a bad play. You love the safety net, I said quietly. You love the audience. That's not love. Her tears spilled anyway. Please, let's just go inside and talk. We can fix this. Adults don't humiliate their partners in public, I said. Adults don't laugh while their friends jeer. Adults don't declare their marriage meaningless because they're in a mood. At that exact moment, a black sedan pulled up. A man in a suit climbed out, folder in hand, walking with businesslike efficiency. Ms. Rachel Keaton, he asked. She blinked. Yes. He extended the folder. Service of process. He handed her the documents, nodded politely to me, and walked back to his car. Rachel clutched the papers, face blanching as the words sank in. You had me served at my own house. At the address you claimed wasn't your home anymore, I said. Her voice cracked. This isn't who you are. You're not this cold. You're right. The man you married wasn't cold. But you taught me warmth meant weakness. Call this graduation. She stared at me trembling, then spun toward the boxes. She lifted one clothes and staggered toward the Civic. The tarp fluttered in the wind like applause. Neighbors watched silently as she loaded what she could. When she turned back, her eyes searched mine for even a flicker of regret, a hint of the man who once bent over backwards to keep her happy. He wasn't home. He was gone with the old locks. Her voice came smaller now. If I leave, I'm not coming back. That's the point, I said. She stood there for another long second, breathing shallow, then climbed into the Civic. The trunk slammed, the engine roared, and she drove off, the sound fading until all that remained was the hum of cicadas and the quiet dignity of a boundary finally drawn. I picked up my bottle, sat back down, and listened to the silence. For the first time in years, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. Saturday morning sunlight spilled across the blinds, warm and golden, but I felt no rush to get up. For the first time in months, I had slept without waking to the sound of Rachel pacing, sighing, or slamming cabinets in irritation. The silence in the house was steady, almost comforting, like the calm hum of an engine that's finally tuned right. Then came the pounding on the front door. Not a knock pounding, heavy, urgent, like someone was trying to break through. My coffee mug rattled against the counter. I walked over still in my t-shirt and pajama bottoms and opened the door. Rachel stood there, hair tangled, makeup-smeared, clothes wrinkled like she hadn't slept. Her eyes burned with a mix of exhaustion and fury. "We need to talk," she snapped, pushing past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. I let the door swing closed behind her. Sure, talk. She paced across the bare room, arms flailing as if she needed the motion to keep from collapsing. This has gone way too far. Putting my things outside, changing the locks, serving me divorce papers. Are you insane? I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her wear grooves into the carpet. "No," I said evenly. "I'm clear. Clarity's different from insanity." "Clarity!" She barked out a humorless laugh. "You call destroying our marriage clarity." "I didn't destroy it," I replied. "You did when you stood in Mark's backyard and told everyone we weren't really married. All I did was believe you." Her face flushed. "I was angry. People say stupid things when they're upset. You can't base life-changing decisions on one argument." One argument. I stepped forward, voice still calm, but harder now. "Let's review. 3 weeks ago, you told me I was suffocating you for asking if you wanted dinner together. 2 weeks ago, you said I was controlling for wondering why you were texting someone at midnight. Last month, you laughed on the phone with your sister about marriage being nothing more than paperwork. Should I keep going?" She froze mid-step. "You were eavesdropping." I almost laughed. "No, Rachel. I was sitting right next to you. You didn't whisper." Her tone shifted softer now, that careful, reasonable voice she used whenever she wanted to reel me back in. She sat on the edge of the couch, leaned forward, hands clasped like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. "Look," she said, "maybe I've been stressed. Work's been crazy, money's been tight, and maybe I took it out on you. But couples work through things. They go to counseling. They compromise. Counseling is for couples who want to stay married," I said. "You made it clear you don't." "That's not true," she shouted, her veneer cracking. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled a few seconds, and held up the screen. "June 10th. You texted me, 'I never asked to be tied down like this. Some of us value independence more than outdated contracts.' Ring any bells?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. The color drained from her cheeks. "You saved that." "I saved all of them," I said. "Every message where you made it clear you don't respect marriage. Amazing how easy decisions get when someone writes their case for you." Her eyes welled. "Please," she whispered. "I know I've been difficult, but I love you. I don't want to lose you." I shook my head slowly. "You don't love me. You love having someone to blame when life gets messy. You love the security of a man standing beside you while you flirt with independence. That's not love. That's convenience." She stood suddenly, tears spilling, and moved closer. "You're being cruel. I made a mistake. Isn't that enough? Sorry for what exactly I asked. Sorry for being caught in front of witnesses. Sorry the consequences showed up. Or sorry you actually meant every word." "I'm sorry I hurt you," she said, voice breaking. "No," I replied coldly. "You're sorry I stopped accepting it." Her phone buzzed, lighting up with a call from her mother. She silenced it quickly, but another notification flashed, a voicemail from her sister. "Your family's been calling all morning," I said. "Your sister left a message begging me not to throw away something beautiful. Your mother wants to set up a family talk to work things out like adults." "They're right," she said desperately. "We can fix this." "They weren't there last Saturday when you laughed as our friends watched me shrink under your words," I said. "They didn't hear you tell everyone we weren't really married. They don't know about months of being mocked for expecting basic respect." She rubbed at her cheeks, leaving mascara streaks. "What do you want from me? What can I do?" "Nothing," I said simply. "You can't unsay what you said. You can't undo months of contempt. And you can't make me forget the humiliation you seem to enjoy. Her knees buckled slightly as she sat back down. But the divorce papers? We don't have to go through with it. We can stop this. I walked to the window looking out at the street. A few of her boxes still sat neatly under the tarp, labeled in thick black marker. You know what's funny? For months I told myself if I just tried harder, gave you more space, stopped asking for anything, maybe you'd remember why you married me. But you never remembered the commitment. You only remembered the party and the presents. That's not true, she whispered. I remember. You remember the dress, the compliments, the spotlight, I said, turning back to face her. But not the vows, not the part about being partners. She began crying in earnest, then shoulders shaking, hands covering her face. Once that sight would have gutted me. Today it only reminded me of every argument where the tears came right on schedule, right when she realized her tactics weren't working. The papers are filed? I said, my voice cold but steady. The locks are changed. Your belongings are packed. You got exactly what you asked for independence. She lowered her hands slowly, staring at me with disbelief, as if waiting for the bluff to end, for the old version of me to crack. But he was gone, and she knew it. This isn't you, she whispered one last time. You're right, I said. The man you married wasn't this cold, but you trained him. Consider this the man you created. The weeks that followed were strange in their simplicity. For the first time in years, my days weren't shaped by Rachel's moods. I woke up without dread, brewed coffee without tension, and sat on the back deck watching the sun creep over the rooftops. It felt like breathing after holding your lungs tight for too long. But the outside world hadn't gone quiet. Word about the barbecue spread faster than wildfire in a dry field. Neighbors talked, friends whispered. By the time the divorce papers were officially stamped, everyone on Sycamore Drive knew the story. And not Rachel's version, the real one. I ran into it one evening at Applebee's. I'd gone in for nothing more than a burger and a cold beer, a little peace after work. But fate has always had a sense of humor. She was there. Rachel sat at a table across the room, leaning forward, voice-animated eyes flashing. I didn't need to be close to hear the story she was spinning. The hand gestures, the forced laughs, it was all the same pattern. Except this time, the women listening weren't buying it. I saw the stiff smiles, the glances toward the door, the way one woman pulled out her phone, mid-conversation like she needed a lifeline. It was a familiar playbook paint herself. The victim pretend her words at the barbecue were taken out of context, plead for sympathy. But sympathy doesn't stretch far when 15 witnesses remember every syllable. I kept my head down, focusing on my food. But then Hank, the guy who'd been manning the grill that night, spotted me. He slid into the booth across from me with a grin. "Brother," he said, lifting his Budweiser, "you are a legend. My wife keeps saying you did what every guy wishes he had the guts to do." I shook my head. "Changing locks isn't heroic." "Not the locks," he said. "Drawing a line. Making it clear. You didn't explode, didn't beg, didn't make a fool of yourself. You just enforced boundaries. That's rarer than you think." He wasn't wrong. Most men, myself included, once upon a time, spend years apologizing for things they never did wrong. But now, clarity had replaced compromise. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I opened it. "Hey, I'm the one in the blue sundress at Mark's barbecue. I've been thinking about what happened. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? You seem like someone who knows his worth." I blinked, then showed the message to Hank. He laughed so hard he nearly choked. "See, folk hero, you stood up and now every woman in town is whispering your name like a campfire story." It wasn't just her. Over the past few weeks, I'd received similar messages, casual acquaintances, friends of friends, women who had seen or heard about the barbecue and decided a man with a backbone was attractive. It felt surreal. Later that night, Mason called. His voice was steady as always. "Final decree signed," he said. "It's over. Officially. You're divorced. Clean case, no delays. Judge signed off this morning." I exhaled slowly, the words washing over me. Not joy, not sorrow, just peace. Like the gavel had cracked open the last chain I hadn't realized I was dragging. "And one more thing," Mason continued. "Restraining orders granted. Limited scope. No direct contact. If she wants to communicate, it goes through my office. It was the kind of boundary Rachel had never respected before. Now the law respected it for me. The next weekend, I was back at Applebee's, same corner booth, same quiet meal. Across the room, Rachel tried again with a different set of friends. Her voice carried, but the reception was the same fidgeting, polite nods, eyes glazed with discomfort. At one point, she looked across the restaurant and saw me. I raised my glass in a small cold toast. Not mocking, not triumphant, just final. Her face flushed crimson. She gathered her things quickly, friends scattering like birds, startled from a wire. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Instead, I drove home down sycamore windows, rolled down warm night air rushing in. The house stood waiting, solid and still. No eggshells, no storm clouds. Just walls, furniture, and silence that felt like honesty. Inside, the last reminders of her had been cleared. No throw pillows she insisted on. No framed photos where her smile looked perfect and mine looked forced. The mantel was bare, waiting for something real. I pulled out a box I'd tucked away in the garage. Inside was our wedding picture. 2 kids smiling like they knew what forever meant. I didn't smash it or burn it. I wrapped it in brown paper, labeled it history, and slid it onto a shelf. The past deserved a place, but not power. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. On the first page, I wrote 3 lines. Keep the house quiet. Say what you mean. Don't negotiate against yourself. Simple rules, strong hinges. The next afternoon, I met the woman in the blue sundress at a coffee shop downtown. We talked about small things, then real things. She didn't ask for the story, and I didn't tell it. We weren't there to dig through ashes. We were there to see if something new could grow. When I left, I realized something. Rachel had wanted me to stop acting like we were married. She got her wish. And in the process, I discovered that being single, being free, wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. I walked into my house, locked the new deadbolt, and smiled. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was losing anything. I felt like I'd finally come home. Here's the next story. My name is Richard Walker, and if you had met me 25 years ago, you would have seen a man whose entire world was crumbling. I was 32, then married to a woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. We had a house in Albany, New York, and I believed we were building something steady and lasting. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. I found out my wife was cheating on me in the cruelest way imaginable. She was having an affair with my own younger brother. I remember the day as if it had been burned into me. I came home early from work planning to surprise her with flowers, only to hear laughter in the bedroom. It wasn't mine. It was his, my brother, my blood, and the woman I trusted above everyone else. That moment shattered me. The betrayal cut so deep I thought I'd never heal. I filed for divorce within the week, cut ties with my brother entirely, and for a long time I lived in a fog of anger and numbness. Friends tried to comfort me, but their words bounced off a wall of bitterness. I swore to myself I'd never let anyone get close again. Love, I told myself, was a trap. But fate has a strange way of testing the vows we make in pain. 2 years later, I met Anna Mitchell in the most ordinary of places, a grocery store, on a Sunday afternoon. She was standing in the produce aisle, holding a small girl on her hip, trying to juggle a bag of apples and a carton of milk. The little girl dropped her toy on the floor, and I bent down to pick it up. That's how I first met Lily, who was just 3 years old at the time. Anna looked exhausted, her smile tired but warm as she thanked me. We started talking. I learned she was recently divorced, abandoned by her husband, a man named Jake, who had walked out on her when Lily was still a toddler. Not only had he left, but he had left scars, emotional and physical. He was cruel, unfaithful, and had made her feel worthless before disappearing completely. Something in her story struck me. Maybe it was because I knew what betrayal felt like, how it twisted your insides until you doubted your own worth. Maybe it was because Lily clung to her mother's neck so tightly, like she was afraid the world would take her away too. I didn't know it then, but that small encounter was the beginning of a new chapter I never expected. We ran into each other again the following week, then again the week after that. Soon it didn't feel like chance anymore. I found myself looking forward to those trips to the store, hoping to see Anna and Lily again. One day, I worked up the nerve to ask if she'd like to get coffee. She hesitated, then agreed. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into long conversations that stretched late into the night. She told me about the years of loneliness of holding everything together for her daughter, while feeling like she was falling apart inside. I told her about my divorce, about the scars my brother and ex-wife had left. Somehow, our broken pieces fit together. We didn't rush. For the first year, I was just a steady presence, someone Anna could rely on, someone Lily could trust. I'd take Lily to the park, push her on the swings, read her bedtime stories when Anna had to study for the social work classes she'd enrolled in. Slowly, that little girl began calling me Dad. The first time she said it, my throat tightened so much I could barely speak. When Anna and I married, it wasn't just about us. It was about becoming a family. I legally adopted Lily when she was 5. I sat in that courthouse, signed the papers, and promised her that she would never have to wonder again if she had a father who loved her. She was mine, not by blood, but by choice. And I came to believe that choice was stronger than any DNA. The years flew by. I worked long hours in construction management, sometimes 12-hour days, but I never missed the important moments. I was there for Lily's first soccer game, cheering louder than anyone. I was there when she lost her first tooth, when she won her first spelling bee, when she broke her arm falling off a bike, and cried into my shoulder while we sat in the ER. Every milestone, every scrape, every triumph, I was there. Anna bloomed, too. With my support, she went back to school full-time, earned her degree, and eventually became a social worker, dedicating her life to helping other families who had been broken like ours once was. I was proud of her. I was proud of us. And Lily. She became the brightest light in my world. She grew into a strong, determined young woman. By high school, she was excelling in academics and sports. She had her pick of colleges, finally choosing Columbia, a decision that made me both terrified to let her go and immensely proud of how far she had come. Through it all, I carried the memory of my first marriage like a scar, but it no longer defined me. Anna's love and Lily's laughter had rebuilt me piece by piece. I thought for the first time in decades that I had finally found my forever. If you had asked me then, I would have sworn nothing could ever break what we had built. I had been tested by betrayal, and I thought I had passed creating a life that was untouchable. I didn't know then how fragile it all truly was. Raising Lily became the center of my entire life. I woke up every morning with one purpose: to give that girl the kind of stability and love she had been denied by the man who abandoned her. For 2 decades, that was my mission. I poured myself into my work so that Anna and Lily never had to worry about bills or security. Construction management isn't glamorous, but it's steady if you know what you're doing. I took every extra shift, every overtime opportunity, and even side jobs when they came. I came home tired sometimes, bone-tired, but walking through the door and hearing Lily yell, "Dad," always revived me. Anna thrived, too. With the steady income I provided, she went back to school and finished her degree. She became a social worker, a career that suited her heart. She had always been the type who carried other people's burdens as if they were her own. I was proud of her, but even prouder of us as a family. We had built something strong out of pieces that once seemed shattered. Lily grew up before my eyes in what felt like fast forward. One moment she was clinging to my leg in the supermarket, the next she was a teenager borrowing my truck to drive to soccer practice. I was there for all of it. Her first crush, her first heartbreak, the late-night talks at the kitchen table when she cried over college applications. Every time I reminded her she was brilliant, strong, and capable, and she believed me because she knew I believed it. When acceptance letters started arriving, it was like validation for all the nights I stayed up fixing broken plumbing in the house, for all the hours I sacrificed at work, for every penny I saved instead of spending on myself. Letters came from Boston, Chicago, even Stanford. But when she opened the one from Columbia, I saw her face light up in a way I'll never forget. "This is it," she whispered, clutching the letter. "Dad, I did it." I hugged her so tightly she laughed and said I was going to break her ribs, but I couldn't help it. That moment made every sacrifice worth it. The years at Columbia passed faster than I imagined. She studied hard, excelled, made friends I only knew by name from the stories she told. When she brought home Adrian, her boyfriend, later fiancé, I shook his hand firmly and studied him carefully. He seemed respectful, ambitious, and most importantly, he treated Lily with the kind of care I wanted for her. I let my guard down slowly. When Adrian proposed and Lily called to tell us, Anna cried with joy. I stood there speechless, the phone pressed to my ear, realizing my little girl wasn't little anymore. She was starting her own family, and I was honored to be part of it. I made her a promise right then, whatever she wanted for her wedding, I would make it happen. She deserved her dream day. I didn't hesitate, didn't flinch at the cost. I had been saving for years for this very moment, and I wasn't about to hold back. We booked a historic estate just outside Albany with sweeping lawns and chandeliers that looked like something out of a movie. I secured a band that charged more for one night than I had ever spent on myself in a year. I reserved rooms at a luxury resort for guests, paid deposits on a honeymoon package in the Caribbean, and even arranged transportation so nobody had to stress. Every time a bill came in, I paid it without blinking. $47,000 in total, maybe more. People might think I was crazy, but I didn't care. This wasn't about money. This was about a father giving his daughter the day she deserved. The girl I had held in my arms at 3 years old, the girl I had taught to ride a bike, the girl whose college tuition I had covered, she was about to walk down the aisle, and I wanted her to feel like the most special woman in the world. As the date approached, I could see the excitement in Anna's eyes and the nervous joy in Lily's. They would sit at the dining table whispering about flower arrangements and bridesmaid dresses, laughing together late into the night. I watched from the doorway, smiling quietly, feeling a sense of completion. I thought, this is it. This is the reward for every sacrifice. This is what it was all for. I imagined myself walking her down the aisle, her arm hooked in mine, her face radiant. I imagined standing beside her for the father-daughter dance, my hands trembling, but proud, the whole room watching as I gave her away. I imagined raising my glass during the toasts, telling everyone how proud I was of her and how certain I was that Adrian would protect and cherish her the way I always had. It was more than a wedding. It was the culmination of 20 years of love, effort, and faith. I didn't know then that beneath the surface something darker was brewing. I didn't know that the joy I felt would be crushed in a way I couldn't imagine. All I knew was that I was ready to give everything once again for the girl I called my daughter. The weeks leading up to the wedding should have been the happiest time of my life. Everything was in place. The estate was booked. The band confirmed, the flowers ordered. Every time I wrote another check, I didn't feel drained, I felt proud. It wasn't about the money, it was about the meaning. This was me, the father who stepped in when no one else would, giving Lily the day she deserved. But little by little, I began to notice cracks. Not in the planning, but in the atmosphere. It started small. Whispered conversations between Anna and Lily that stopped the second I walked into the room. Phone calls cut short with hurried, "I'll call you back," as I came down the stairs. Glances exchanged at the dinner table, nervous and fleeting. At first, I brushed it off. Weddings were stressful. Maybe they were just keeping surprises from me, plans for the father-daughter dance or some sentimental speech. But the unease grew. I'd walk past Lily's room late at night and hear her voice, low, tense, carrying a weight I couldn't place. Anna avoided my eyes more often, her smile too practiced, when I asked if everything was all right. My gut told me something was wrong, but I forced myself to push it down. After everything I had been through, I didn't want to be the paranoid man, again seeing betrayal where there was none. Then came the night they asked for a family meeting. We sat in the living room, the three of us. I remember the way Anna folded her hands in her lap, her knuckles white, and how Lily kept twisting the ring on her finger. My chest tightened before a word was even spoken. Lily finally looked up, her eyes wet with something between guilt and determination. "Dad," she began softly, "there's something I need to tell you. And I need you to hear me out before you react." My throat went dry. "All right, what is it?" She took a shaky breath. I've been in contact with Jake. The name hit me like a slap. Jake. The man who abandoned her. The man who made Anna feel worthless, who left a 3-year-old girl without a father. The man who never once showed up for a birthday, a graduation, a doctor's appointment. I blinked, trying to process, certain I must have misheard. What did you just say? I reached out to him, she continued, her voice trembling. And he wants to be at the wedding. The room spun. You're telling me? I said slowly, my voice low and tight, that you invited him to your wedding. The man who walked out on you before you could even form a memory. Her chin quivered, but she held her ground. He's still my biological father, and I want him there. I want him to walk with me, too. My heart dropped into my stomach. Walk with you as in down the aisle. Yes, she whispered. I want both of you. I want you and him. And I want him to say a few words at the reception. Maybe even a father-daughter dance. For a moment, the world went quiet. The rain outside, the ticking clock on the wall, even my own heartbeat seemed to disappear. I stared at her, my daughter, the girl I had raised, the girl I had fed and clothed and carried through every storm of her life, and she was asking me to share that honor with a man who had done nothing but leave. Anna finally spoke, her voice gentle but shaking. Richard, please try to understand. Lily has questions. She wants closure. She feels like she needs this connection, even if it's just for one day. I turned to her, disbelief coursing through me. Closure. You think a man who abandoned you both, who never lifted a finger to help, deserves to play the role of father on her wedding day after 20 years of absence? Anna's eyes fell to the floor. She didn't answer. I looked back at Lily, searching her face for some sign that this was a mistake, that she didn't mean what she was saying. But all I saw was a stubborn resolve, a decision already made. I don't believe this, I muttered, running a hand over my face. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed vacations, new cars, nights of sleep hell. I gave up parts of myself so you could have every opportunity. And now when it matters most, you want to put me on equal ground with him. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Dad, it's not about replacing you. You'll always be my father. But he's still part of who I am. I want him there too. Her words sliced deeper than any betrayal I had known. I thought back to the late nights at the kitchen table helping her with math homework, the afternoons driving her to practice in the pouring rain, the hospital visits, the scraped knees, the endless encouragement when she doubted herself. I thought of signing those adoption papers, promising her she'd never be fatherless again. And now she was telling me I wasn't enough. I sat there, stunned, anger and heartbreak tangling inside me. For years I had carried the fear that I was just a substitute, a stand-in for the man who walked away. I thought I had buried that fear, proven it wrong. But in one conversation, Lily resurrected it, made it flesh and bone. I didn't shout. I didn't rage. I just felt the hollow ache of something cracking open inside me. Do what you want, I said finally, my voice cold. But remember, these choices have consequences. I stood and walked out of the room, leaving them both in silence. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor until the lines blurred. 18 years ago, I promised a little girl she would never wonder if she had a father. And that night, for the first time, I wondered if she ever truly saw me as one at all. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the shadows stretching across the room, listening to Anna breathing beside me. My mind replayed the conversation in the living room over and over, each word like a hammer striking the same spot in my chest. She wanted him there. She wanted him to walk her down the aisle. She wanted him to speak, to dance, to stand as though the last 20 years of abandonment meant nothing. By sunrise, the decision was already made. I went downstairs, brewed coffee, and sat at the table with my laptop. I opened every contract, every receipt, every booking confirmation. The estate, the band, the flowers, the resort, the honeymoon package. Each one of them had my name on it. Each one of them had been paid with my hard-earned money, and every one of them could be undone. With a calmness I didn't expect, I started making calls. The manager of the estate answered, first cheerful as she confirmed the cancellation. The deposit was non-refundable, but the bulk of the balance would be credited back within days. I didn't care about the deposit. That was the price of my clarity. Next, the band. They were disappointed, but professional. Canceled. The florist, the resort, the honeymoon agency, one by one, I erased the wedding I had built. Each call was like pulling a stone from a wall until the entire structure collapsed. When the last cancellation was confirmed, I logged into the bank account. The wedding fund, $47,000, every cent I had scraped together for her dream day was still there. I transferred it to my personal account in full. Watching the numbers shift on the screen gave me a strange sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt in control. By the time Anna came downstairs, I was already closing the laptop. She rubbed her eyes, yawning. "You're up early? Couldn't sleep?" "No," I said simply. She frowned, sensing something. "Richard, are you all right?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman who had once cried in my arms because Jake had left her broken. And now she had stood by while Lily invited him back into our lives, into our home, into the most sacred moment of our family. The betrayal wasn't hers, not directly, but her silence the night before had been just as sharp as Lily's words. I canceled everything I said quietly. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "The wedding," I replied. "The estate, the band, the honeymoon, all of it, gone. And I pulled the money. It's mine now." Her mouth fell open. "You what, Richard? You can't do that. The wedding is in a few weeks." "There is no wedding. Not the one I paid for." My voice was calm, almost too calm. If Jake wants to play the role of father, then he can pay for the show. He can book the venue, hire the band, buy the flowers. Let's see how far his wallet stretches after 2 decades of silence. Her face paled. "Richard, think about Lily. She's counting on this." "Counting on me," I snapped, finally letting the ice crack. "No. She's counting on Jake now. She made her choice, and I'm making mine." Anna stepped closer, tears pooling in her eyes. "Please don't punish her like this. She doesn't understand." "She's 23 years old," I cut her off. "She understands enough to spit in my face and call it fairness. She understands enough to drag in a man who abandoned her while putting me on the same level as him. That wasn't ignorance. That was a choice." Anna covered her mouth, sobbing, but I didn't waver. Later that day, when Lily came over, the storm hit. She had found out from the venue that everything had been canceled. She barged into the house, her eyes red with fury. "Dad, what did you do?" "They called me. They said you canceled everything." I stood there steady. "I did. The money's gone too. You'll need to make other arrangements." Her voice cracked with disbelief. "How could you? Do you know what this does to me, to Adrian, to all our plans?" I took a slow breath. "Do you know what it did to me when you asked to put me side by side with the man who abandoned you? When you asked me to share the role I've bled for with someone who never earned it?" She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that," I said, my voice low but unyielding. "You wanted him. Now let him step up. Let's see if he's willing to carry even 1 ounce of what I've carried for 20 years. Anna tried to intervene, her hand on Lily's shoulder, but I raised mine. Don't ask me to forgive this. I won't." Lily's face twisted with anger and desperation. "You're ruining everything." "No," I said coldly. "I'm setting myself free." The fight ended with her storming out, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Anna stayed behind, crying softly, begging me to reconsider. But my heart was done bending. That evening, I packed a suitcase of my own, not to leave immediately, but to remind myself I had options. I pulled out the paperwork I had prepared weeks earlier, documents for selling the house. If I had to, I would sign them and start over somewhere new. I had given 20 years of my life, every ounce of love, every dollar I could spare. And in return, when it mattered most, I was told I wasn't enough. That night, standing alone in the kitchen, I realized the truth. Love without respect is slavery. And I had no intention of living as a slave to people who saw me as replaceable. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. The weeks after I canceled everything were chaos. Phone calls, texts, tears, angry messages, I ignored them all. Lily begged, Anna pleaded, Adrian even reached out once, but my answer never changed. I was done. If Jake wanted to play father, he could carry the burden. I wasn't going to give another cent or another ounce of my soul to people who had decided I was just a placeholder. I didn't go to the wedding. Of course I didn't. I knew the date, but when it arrived, I spent the day quietly in a diner off Route 9, drinking coffee and reading the paper. Part of me wondered what was happening in that moment, what dress she wore, what vows she spoke, but mostly I felt relief. It wasn't my day anymore. It wasn't my responsibility. Later, word started trickling back through neighbors' mutual friends, and eventually even from Adrian's relatives. The dream wedding I had planned, the estate with chandeliers, the luxury honeymoon, all of it had been replaced with something pitiful. Jake, the great biological father she insisted on honoring, had hosted the ceremony in his own backyard. A sagging canopy tent, mismatched chairs, and a plastic arch from the hardware store. 20 guests, maybe fewer. No band, just a speaker system blaring tinny music. The cake was store-bought, and the caterer was a stack of pizza boxes piled on a folding table. When I first heard it, I almost laughed. Not out of joy, but out of the bitter irony. She threw away everything I built for her, $47,000 worth of love, effort, and sacrifice for that. And it got worse. Jake couldn't even make it through the night sober. He got drunk before the ceremony ended, stumbling through his speech, slurring his words about making up for lost time. At the reception, if you could even call it that, he made inappropriate jokes, grabbed at women who weren't interested, and picked a fight with Adrian's uncle. The night ended with him being shoved into an Uber, leaving his daughter behind with nothing but embarrassment. That was her real father. That was the man she had chosen to stand beside her. I didn't need to be there to know how humiliating it must have felt. A few weeks later, Adrian walked away too. Rumors spread that he couldn't handle the dysfunction, that the weight of Jake's antics and Lily's blind loyalty to him had poisoned the relationship. Whatever the truth was, the engagement dissolved before the ink was even dry on the marriage license. I heard all of this not because I asked, but because people couldn't help telling me. Some said it with pity, some with schadenfreude, but all I felt was a hollow confirmation of what I already knew. I had made the right choice. Then one afternoon, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Inside was a letter from Lily. She poured her heart out in shaky script. She wrote that she was sorry that she had been foolish, that Jake had already disappeared again. She admitted she let her curiosity and desperation blind her to the truth that the man who raised her was the only father she had ever truly known. She begged me to forgive her, to meet her, to talk. She ended the letter with, "You'll always be my dad. Please don't give up on me." I read it once, then I folded it, walked to the fireplace, and fed it to the flames. It was too late. I had given her 2 decades of my life, and when it mattered most, she chose a ghost over me. Maybe one day she would learn what that decision cost, but I wasn't going to carry her regret for her. Not long after I sold the house. Too many memories lingered in those walls, birthdays, Christmas mornings, arguments, tears, laughter. Some were beautiful, but all of them were heavy. I needed something new, something mine. I bought a cabin on Lake George, a small, quiet place surrounded by trees and water. There, for the first time in years, I felt peace. My days became simple. Coffee on the porch at sunrise, fishing in the afternoons, books stacked by the fire, silence that wasn't heavy but healing. Sometimes I'd sit on the dock and think about everything, about Anna, about Lily, about the boy I once was in Albany who thought love was permanent. And I realized something. Love isn't proven by grand gestures or by blood or by ceremonies. Love is proven in the quiet daily choices, the rides to school, the scraped knees bandage, the late-night talks, the steady presence through every storm. I had given that kind of love every single day for 20 years. And if that wasn't enough, then nothing ever would be. So I let go. Anna moved in with relatives after the house sold, drifting into a life that no longer touched mine. Lily, last I heard, was bouncing between apartments, still trying to piece together what she had lost. And Jake, well, he was gone again like he always had been. Some men never change. As for me, I found a strange kind of freedom. I thought losing my daughter would destroy me, but instead it stripped me down to something raw and honest. I was no longer trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I was replaceable. On quiet nights at the cabin when the lake reflects the moon and the world feels still, I sometimes whisper to myself, I was enough. They just didn't see it. And that's all the closure I'll ever need. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.